Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to my talk. Thanks also to DDD Europe for inviting me, of course. I never thought I would be on that stage one day, but here I am. That's pretty cool. Eric Evans' book has been released like almost 20 years ago now. And DDD has continued to gain popularity since then. And I see many more teams that want to get into DDD, which is a pretty good thing, actually. So what do people do when they want to know a bit more about this DDD thing everyone is talking about? Well, that's easy. They just open their favorite search engine and type in domain-driven design. And that's the kind of result they might have. So we can see books, of course, but also architecture diagrams or UML diagrams. And if you see the themes on top there, I don't know if you can see them correctly, but you can see things like bounded context, application layer, microservices, or even Java. So that's a lot of different things. And it gets even worse when you start reading blog articles, blog posts, and the list of strange words keep on growing. And you have a bunch of different things here. So this can seem a bit confusing, maybe, and quite intimidating, maybe, and perhaps discouraging, right? One might feel a bit of elitism here as well. If you need to know all those stuff before getting into DDD, well, maybe that's the time to start studying all this and come back in 10 years or maybe. Well, you can also read books. Eric Evans one, obviously, but there are others. Scott Mietz and Nick Tune, the ones from Von Vernon, Scott Blashin, and the one from Vladik Kononov, which has been released quite recently. But all those books are quite heavy. And as Thomas just said, for example, for the domain-driven design book from Eric Evans, you must read it 5 times. So it requires a lot of time. And people actually don't have maybe the necessary time or energy to read them all. And last but not least, you need to be able to read in English. And I'm looking at you, my fellow French speakers. That's not quite easy. So in short, it would be nice if there was a way to get into DDD that was maybe more easy. And based on this observation, several initiatives has emerged recently in which I have the chance to help. And the aim of those initiatives is to make DDD a bit easier to get into. So the first initiative I will talk about is the Virtual DDD. Virtual DDD is a platform that organizes regularly free online events. There's conferences, talks, discussions, workshops, a lot of different tools, and everything is recorded, and it's available on the virtualddd.com website. So yeah, give it a try. There's a lot of incredible content. Okay, of course, the main topic is domain-driven design, but well, all the subject covers are quite broad, so it's more about design in general. So yeah, please go to this website. And the other one is the Domain-Driven Design Crew, which is a GitHub organization that has been created by Nick Tune, and where you can find a lot of open source resources about DDD. You will find articles, workshop descriptions, pictures, templates, canvases, a lot of different things. Those things are pretty easy, actionable tool that will let you start easily with domain-driven design. So, my name is Maxime Sanglan-Charlier. I'm a Belgian consultant / facilitator and trainer living in France. I'm quite into domain-driven design architecture, and I'm also an early adopter of Evenstorming. You can find me on Twitter on this handle. And I'm also organizing a conference, which is called New Crafts in Paris. I'm part of the virtual DDD team and a contributor on the DDD crew GitHub repositories. And I'm also the co-founder of the software crafters community in Nantes, the city where I live in France. So, we are going to talk about the DDD Starter Modeling Process, which you, of course, can find on DDD crew GitHub repository. This will be the topic of my talk today. So, how this DDD Starter Modeling Process looks like. Here it is. So, on this image, the first thing you can read is that it's a guide and not a rigid procedure, and this is not the new silver bullet neither. So all these steps here are optional, and their usefulness will depend on the context. That could be the complexity or the scope or whatever. So DDD recommends an iterative and continuous design process. So do this guide, of course. All the steps are based on the set of tools and practices that must be done in a collaborative way, and that's very important. So quite often this will require, on the one hand, people that know what to do, like domain experts, business analysts, product owners, and on the other hand, people who know how to do it, like developers, architects, but testers, QAs, UX and UI people as well. If you look at this picture, you can notice that there are maybe several main areas, and they correspond to the main different phases of this process, of this guide. And Eduardo da Silva, which is here in the conference, also has a talk where he gives those section different names. So here they are. The first one is align and understand. The second one is strategic architecture. Then we have strategy and organization design, and then tactical architecture. The link of the talk of Eduardo will be in the references slide. And I will upload the slides so you will be able to see it. Quick aside before we going back to the thick of it. Yeah, this is all the tools and practices I'm going to talk about are mostly described in this great book, which I can't recommend you enough to read. Visual collaboration tools, as its name indicates, is a set of visual collaboration tools. So Joao and Kenny asked several facilitators to contribute to this book, and they actually provided with a description of their practice or workshop description and tips and tricks on how to use it and get the most out of it. Yeah, so that's a pretty interesting book with a lot of interesting stuff, and it can be found on LeanPub, as you can see the link, and the funds raised are actually donated to an association whose goal is to bring more diversity to tech. So please buy it and read it. That's gold mine. So back to the starter modeling process. The first step of this process is understand. So determining the architecture of a product or a platform is not done by rushing headlong into the code. First, you need an understanding of the business domain, and this understanding must be shared by all the stakeholders. And this requires a good understanding of the company's business model. So what are we trying to understand in this phase? We want a 10,000 feet view, actually, and focus on the business model. Who are the target users? What are their needs? What are the value propositions of the products? Everyone really needs to be aligned with the business goal. Every decision that will be made must be aligned with this business vision. So that's very, very important. And unfortunately, I see many teams, many development teams that are not participating at such workshops. And it's really sad because it gives a lot of meaning to the team. Teams are aware of the impacts their development will have and who it will serve. So it's much more motivating than just developing feature without knowing actually the impact they will have or the problems they are trying to solve. So here you can use tools like the business model canvas. It's a very simple tool to use. It allows you to visualize to whom and how the company actually generates value. And it's then much more easier to ensure that the problems you are trying to solve contribute to the success of the company. And that the decision will make actually have a positive impact on the business and on the end users. You can also use different tools, like the product vision board, which is kind of like the business model canvas, but maybe more focused on one product. And of course, you can do some impact mapping here, where you focus on the main objective and try to find out the different impacts. Yeah, so that's a lot of different tools that you can use on this phase. Second step, discover. This one is very, very crucial because most of the next step of this process will be based on the result of this discovery phase. So here we will focus on discovering the business domain, and we will dig into the domain. And then it will be done, once again, collaboratively and visually with domain experts. We are not looking for perfection at this stage. We just want a shared understanding of the domain. So you will have the opportunity to ask anything you want about the domain, and everyone should be aligned then on the same level of understanding. So it will also be the perfect time to start building a common vocabulary. And Thomas already mentioned that with the ubiquitous language, building a glossary of domain terms, and those domain terms will be discovered along the workshops you'll be doing during this discovery phase. And having common vocabulary will improve the quality of the communication between all the stakeholders. And having a good communication will increase the chances of success. Good communication is a success factor. So this is really important to get into this vocabulary and share all this vocabulary. And this vocabulary will be, of course, based on domain terms that domain experts will be using mainly. So the collaborative aspect here is crucial. And so we will ensure that the dissemination of information and knowledge will be done through the whole team. And that's very, very important. We'll have this opportunity to build a common ground. And also, as the knowledge is often spread into different heads, actually, it will be the perfect time to bring back the pieces of the puzzle all together. I had this workshop once that was at the railway French company, and we were doing a workshop, and the goal was to maybe try to imagine what would be the best way to increase the quality or the accuracy of information displayed to the user in railway stations. So what a program. And then, so we started with trains, actually. The trains were the main actors, and they were explaining me that trains were going on sensors that were placed on railway, and the train that was going above the sensor was saying, well, I'm this train, I'm train number 123, and I'm here, so that's great. So we have the right information, and then we can adapt the information display on the screen about the delays or whatever. But there was another kind of train. And those trains were saying, when they were passing all above the sensor, and they were saying, like, well, I'm A train, and that's it. I'm just passing by, and I'm A train, and I won't give you my number. So there was this whole system here involved where they had this huge calculation of trying to find out what was the chances of this train to be, actually. And at the end of the process, you had 1 or 2 choices saying, well, this must be this train, based on what we know, but we're not sure, or not 100% sure. So I asked people in the room, well, can we dig into that part? And no one was knowing actually this important domain. So we had like a hole in the process. So and even there were a lot of people during this workshop, but we had that hole right in the middle with the important stuff. So it's really important to have a lot of people available and domain experts from different areas of the domain, so you can put back the pieces of the puzzle back together. So it's not really the number of person that is important right here, but maybe the quality of the person, and bring curious people, and have a diversity of people, meaning that people from different backgrounds and experience might bring some new perspective and ask different questions, like newcomers, for example. They don't know anything about the domain, so they will ask a simple question, and that's great. Actually, this reminds me of this story when I was at a client's place doing a workshop, and they were building an accounting tool. And one of the domain experts said to me, well, we are just handling this type of accounting because there's 2 types of accounting, and we are dealing just with that one. So I said, well, great. Just describe those 2 kinds of accounting, so it will we will put it in this glossary of domain terms that we'll be using throughout the whole life cycle of the project. So she gave me both the descriptions, and then I heard someone in the back saying, well, I've been hired like 5 years ago, and that's the first time I understand the difference between the 2. Great. That sounds funny, but it's great, actually, because we align everyone at the same level of understanding. And this person was here from 5 years now, and he won't dare asking that simple question. So having someone that is playing this role of asking the simple question, I do like that when I'm playing this role during workshop, because I don't know anything about new domains. So I will ask simple question, and it's important to bring those questions to the table as well. So everyone will be sure to understand every single stuff. So. Yeah, so what do we use here? So my first choice for this phase is Evenstorming. Well, you might say he's a bit biased because he said he's an early adopter. That's true. But I do love this tool. It's very, very powerful. And it's totally adapted to this discovery phase when you want to get into a new domain. So it has been invented by Alberto Brandolini, who's there for the pre-conference workshops and the conference as well. So feel free to ask him some questions about Evenstorming. It comes with 3 flavors, and the big picture Evenstorming flavor is the right one to the perfect option for this discovery phase. So this is quite difficult to read this, but this is an example of what can be achieved with Evenstorming in a small amount of time. So we spent like, I don't know, 5 or 6 2-hour sessions to map out the whole landscape of a car renting platform for a client. So you can see there are mainly orange stickies, which are the events, and that's why it's called Evenstorming, by the way. And what is an event? Actually, it's something that happened that usually the business cared about, and it reads from left to right, and it's on the timeline. But you can put other stuff on your Evenstorming, and Alberto actually is used to say, Evenstorming is my pizza. You can put everything on top of it, except pineapples and database tables, of course. So that's the complete quote. Yeah, so you can see there are other stuff like the fuchsia diamonds there. Those are the hotspots, and hotspots is a very efficient way to visualize places where you, well, still have questions maybe. the first thing you will do when you will be doing Evenstorming is to model the happy path. And Alberto calls this phase the rush to the goal, actually. And you can even put the latest stickies, the latest event that should happen, the one that make your customer happy or where your company is earning money, for example. And then you can put all the remaining stickies in between. That's a way to do Evenstorming. So you will rush to the goal, but you will maybe stumble upon places where things might go wrong, of course, or edge cases to deal with. This is the perfect place to put some hotspots as reminders of places where you still need to dig into the domain. So it's very a useful thing to put. But you can put other things. We cannot see that on this picture, but when you will read the slide, maybe you will see that there's a lot of gray boxes above the stickies, and that's where actually we are putting the definitions of the domain term we stumbled upon during the workshop. So all the definition of the terms are there, including acronym that everyone is using. And believe me, in France, they have this disease where they use acronyms for everything. So you have a lot of acronyms that are defined here. Cool thing about the DDD Starter Modeling Process is that it doesn't enforce you to use one single tool per step. So you have a lot of options, and my #1 tool for this discovery phase is Evenstorming, as I said, but there's a lot of other tools you can use. And if your team is more familiar with domain storytelling, let's say, well, please continue to use that tool, because it serves also to discover a business domain quite efficiently. And all those tools can be complementary as well. Example mapping works pretty great with Evenstorming, for example. For example mapping, you will focus on the business rules, and you will try to find out examples that help you to validate those rules. And this is a gold mine for the development team, because they can start even to write some tests and do some code. So you could jump directly from the discovery phase, if you have enough information, to the code phase. Remember, all the steps are optional. So, so by the way, there will be a lot of hands-on during the conference. You'll be doing business model-oriented stuff with Zofia. You will be doing user story mapping with Trond. Stefan and Lena will be here for domain storytelling. There's a lot of other tools. So, please register to those different hands-on during the conference if you're here tomorrow and Friday to practice those pretty efficient tools. Next step is the decompose phase. So we now have a great understanding of the domain, and now it will be the time to break down this domain into smaller parts. So why do we want to do that? Because we want the subdomain to emerge. It is important for several reasons, because this will reduce the necessary cognitive load to allow us to think about subparts of the domain independently. And this gives team more autonomy as they can work independently on isolated parts of the domain. And this phase actually bring together the things that change together. So we will have some more cohesion to the knowledge, and the resulting cut will shape our architecture. What we can do here is, I said, the outcome of the discovery phase, so Evenstorming, for instance, will help us to identify those subdomains. Whether it comes from an Evenstorming or a domain storytelling, it doesn't matter. You can do that with both workshops. In this example, we can see the result of the same workshop done by two different groups in the same company. So this is something I often recommend, is to let the workshop be done by several groups and see what are the outcomes of the two groups. As you can see here, there are some stuff that are similar, but there are some differences, and that's where it's getting quite interesting, because it brings a lot of interesting discussion, and then we can maybe converge towards a consensus. The exercise here we asked to the participant was to highlight the subdomains by circling the events that were going together. And they were trying also to give this area a name. So to do that, we will use a whole set of design heuristics. But we will also use all the visual element that comes for free with the event storming, like pivotal events, actors, systems, or whatever. And you will be, of course, helped by the domain experts during this workshop also, because they will bring some even more clues to achieve this decomposition. The next phase is the connect phase. And the outcome of the previous phase, you must consider it as a first version, call it a draft. So we are at the steps of hypothesis. These are no more than bets of on the future. So it's necessary to validate those subdomains, even if it means that we might be wrong at the first place. And that's not a problem, because we can go back. I'm not sure we can see that on this picture, but there are gray rows in the background of this picture that shows that this process is quite iterative. And so if you need to go back to a previous step to dig more into a certain parts of the domain, then you can do that. That's very, very frequent stuff to do. The design we will learn about the domain along all the steps, so everything is iterative. So in this phase, we will try to focus on connecting the different subdomains by identifying their interaction and their dependencies. And it's very important to validate the relevance of these divisions and see how if it leads to a loosely coupled architecture. And properly dividing up your domain is very important, but you need to look closely to the interaction between the different parts, actually. And you need to limit the coupling, because it would bring accidental complexity to your system. So what can we use here? We can use this pretty useful tool, the domain message flow modeling, which is a tool that you can find on DDD Crew, of course. And the idea is to take a business use case and see how the subdomains are solicited to make it happen, actually. So in this example, we can see all the subdomains that are interacted with each other to fulfill the placing an online order scenario. So we have this customer who is placing an order through the website. Website is placing an order on the sales subdomain, which will emit an event, order place that is interesting for other stuff, and so on and so on. You're modeling the flow quite easily. So you will gain really some more knowledge about the domain during all the steps, because all the different tools will bring you another perspective and new insights. And for this example actually is the fully detailed view of the domain message flow modeling. I recommend not to do that first. Maybe just try to first identify the messages, and then maybe try to find out the data, and then the message type that is more suitable. So here are examples of domain message flow modeling I've made with my clients. And one of the strengths of this tool is it's pretty straightforward. Sorry. So if you want to discuss different options, you just have to copy paste one of the option and then change the stuff and start having interesting discussion about the differences and the trade-offs of the two options. Another tool that has already been mentioned by Thomas during his talk is the context mapping. So it's very useful, and here we won't focus on messages that are exchanged between subdomains, but we are looking for dependencies. And there's a list of patterns that are available to help you to characterize these dependencies and describe the way things are coupled. And once again, as soon as it's visualized, it's easy to spot issues or design issues or whatever. You can use those to model your current architecture or legacy systems, because you will visualize things that are too much coupled maybe, and things where you can improve your system. That's pretty cool. So the list of patterns there, the cheat sheet, has been done by Michael Plott, who is doing a talk right now about context mapping on the other room. And it's, of course, available on DDD Crew GitHub repository. The next phase, strategize. Here, we will classify all the subdomains we discovered. What does that mean? So, time and people allocated to product development are often limited. We know that. So it's therefore very essential to identify the parts of the domain where you need to focus on. So where you will have the most impact on the business and on the end users. And by performing this analysis, you get a better idea of where to focus. And obviously, it would be on your core subdomains, because that's where you need to put the focus on. You need to pay attention. You need to bring seniority to the teams because of their strategic impact. So this phase is really important, but that's not something that teams know. Sometimes I go to companies where people are spending a lot of time and effort on things that are not core to their business. So they are maybe focusing on stuff that are less important than their core domain. So this phase will obviously avoid you to fall into that trap. And when this exercise is done, actually, you are able to make decisions on which part of the domain you should develop internally, or maybe buy and replace by third-party tools as well, because that's not part of your core domain. You can use this very simple tool. It's Nicktune's core domain chart, which is also available where? On DDD Crew, of course, as the other tools mainly. So here we will place all of the subdomains on this graph, and we have two axes. On the horizontal axis, we will try to answer the question, does this subdomains give me a competitive advantage, for example? And on the vertical axis, we will gauge the complexity of the subdomain. So this will allow us to have a clear view of what to focus on, where to pay particular attention. Those are the core domains, of course. And on DDD Crew, actually, Nick is also explaining how he uses this tool for different purposes, as imagining the solution in the situation in medium or long term, for example. When you are in a competitive business, you have something that maybe bring you a competitive advantage, but chances are quite high that your competitors will catch up pretty soon with the same thing. So you need to think about your next core domain. And so you can use this simple tool maybe to anticipate this situation and try to find out what will be the focus next years or in 2 years, for example. I've done a similar thing with one of my clients. They wanted to rebuild the whole platform. It was a huge legacy platform, 15 years old platform. So we first identified the subdomains, and we used the core domain chart to find out what were the core domains. And we found out actually that they were the actual architecture, the old architecture, was not really aligned with business objectives anymore, and they were focusing on things that were not core to the domain anymore. So we use this tool to show how things needed to evolve so they would be aligned with the business objectives. So you can see things that are moving from core to supporting core domain, and the supporting below can go up into the core domain. So it was pretty useful, and as soon as, of course, as you visualize stuff, it's easy to discuss. In the organizing phase, we will focus on teams. So, during the connect phase, we said that it was very, very important to identify the dependencies and the interaction between all the subdomains in a technical point of view, but it's equally important to do that from a team perspective. So, you know, sometimes teams are not able to deliver as much work as they would like to because they are dependent on the work of other teams. So the teams that must, like, I don't know, synchronize for every single changes with everyone are not pretty efficient. So this phase aims at spotting those problems and ensure that the teams have a reduced cognitive load also. It often happens that a single team has to deal with too much different parts of the domain, and it leads to context switching, which is a really, really bad thing. So also a high work in progress is maybe also potentially a sign that your team has too many responsibilities. Here, you can use team topologies, and team topology comes to two types of shapes. So first type of shape is the type of team, and then you have the type of communication, and then you can quickly visualize the team that maybe collaborate too much with others, and then we can address the problem easily. And you can also use context map again, because context map, it's a really powerful tool because it's a socio-technical tool, because it makes it possible to characterize the type of interaction between the teams as well. You can just focus on team interaction and without having to think about also the technical relationship between subdomains. So that is very, very cool. So you can spot maybe the high coupling between teams or the dependencies between teams, and as soon as it's visualized, you can try to find out a way out. So that's an example I've done with one of my clients. And what we actually highlighted is the uncomfortable situation of this team in the middle, the product team. They were developing the main product of the company, the one that was bringing money to the company. And they were downstream from a lot of different other teams, meaning that the impacts from the outside, all the changes from the outside were impacting them actually. So they were not spending their time to develop new feature or do bug fixing or whatever. No, they were just coping with trying to fix the things that were not working anymore because of the changes of the outside. So they knew that the situation was not really cool. So with this map, we were able to visualize exactly what were the problems and discuss about it with the managers, for example. So once again, whenever something is visualized, it's easy to discuss about it and to spot the issues and try to solve them. Right. In the define phase, we will gather all the information we collected during the previous phases, but we will also gain new insight to help us to validate our choices. So, we will clearly identify the roles and the responsibilities of the boundaries, and we'll ensure that we have validated everything that needs to be validated. So at this stage, as at the others, it's not uncommon to question certain points. This is why this approach, once again, is iterative. You can go back to a previous steps to revalidate certain things and then go back to that one. So at this point where we are going to ask ourselves new questions, will bring us a new perspective and new insights once again. And one of the key points of this phase is that we will also document the architecture, which is always good to have some documentation. And yeah, so we can use this bounded context canvas, which is also available on DDD Crew, of course. And as you can see, first thing to fill in is the name and the description. And believe me, it's not as easy as it looks. Just giving a name can bring you some design smell, let's say. If you see names that contains manager or something, well, you might be pay attention and maybe try to find out a better word, because manager, that means a lot of different things, so you don't have the right intent or purpose with this name. And that goes the same for the description. If you see, think, well, my boundary is doing this and that, well, maybe that's too much responsibility. So yeah, only giving your boundary a name and a description will give you some interesting information. So you can this is a canvas you can change however you want. So I often use a simplified version of it with my clients. There are a couple of interesting articles. Kenny wrote one where he described how he used this canvas and changed this canvas to put all the example mapping result workshop in it. And Nick also have an article saying how to use swim lanes, maybe to add some more readability to this canvas. So on the DDD Crew GitHub repository, you can find this filled-in example of the bounded context canvas, so you can have a look on what it looked like. So here we have the advertising campaign runner bounded context that is described. So this can start an advertising campaign, apply rules and stuff like that. So you can see here that a lot of different things from this canvas comes from other workshops you've done before. So strategy qualification, it's the core domain chart that will provide you information about what your domain is, a core domain, supporting subdomain, whatever. The inbound and outbound communication, that's the information you can have from your domain message flow modeling workshop as well. Here you can see you have a website that can start a campaign, post-campaign, or whatever. You have also a mobile app that is able to do some queries, so that's all the stuff you will discover during your domain message flow modeling during the connect phase of this guide. You can also have a lot of information coming from your Evenstorming or from the discovery phase, like the ubiquitous language Thomas already mentioned. Here you have a way when you can collect all those terms, the domain terms, and pay attention that this campaign rule definition here only applies to this bounded context. That means that a word can have different meanings based on the context it will be used. And I often use the book example. For me, what is a book? A book is an author, title, type of novel, maybe a number of pages. That's it, almost. Well, but from the point of view of a printer, who is the company that will print all the books? What is a book? They do not care about all this. What they care about is the paper that will be used, how many tons of paper they will have to buy, the type of book, how many books do I need to print, where do I need to send them or ship them and make package and stuff like that. So and it goes also for the other contexts like the librarian. Well, what is a book for them? That's the place on the shelves. That's the number of items in stock, the number of items I need to book again, or the number of items I need to return back. That's a lot of different things. So the book here, the definition of the book will change depending on the context where it will be used. And that's very important because this canvas gives you a boundary on this meaning of the campaign rule in this example. Once again, when you have everything displayed here, it's quite easy to reason about. And that's why we imagine a workshop with Nick where we provided a lot of different bounded context canvas that were filled up, and participants had to spot design issues just at looking at them. And well, they are discovering a lot of design issues or questions they might have about this just at looking at it. So this is this is very, very cool to visualize everything once again. You can also do some C4 diagrams, which is a Simon Brown's C4 diagrams. It gives you also a lot of interesting information and perspective, and it documents also your architecture, which is quite cool. So on the left side, it was with another client where we did that. So right in the middle, that's the description of the platform. And then above, you see all the different actors that are interacting with this platform, and you specify all the use cases of those different actors. And then just below, normally, you have enough space to put all your external systems that interact with this platform. But as you can see there were a lot of external services to deal with. And on the right view, that's the container view. It's as if you were zooming into the platform and looking under the hood. What kind of stuff do I need to deploy to make this whole mess work? So yeah, so that's also a pretty good way to visualize stuff and dependencies at this stage. The latest stage, obviously, the circle would not be complete without the code. So yeah, here we will implement what we defined in the previous phases. We will make choices on the tactical patterns to apply. What style of architecture for this particular bounded context? What code patterns to choose? All these choices will, of course, depend on the nature and the level or complexity of your bounded context. And of course, as I said before, you need to focus particularly on your core domains. This is where the tactical patterns pay off. So maybe if you're working on your core domain, you will try to maybe use a different style of architecture, like hexagonal architecture or onion or whatever, that will ensure that your domain is quite protected because it needs to be. So, to wrap it up, the DDD Starter Modeling Process is a guide and not a rigid methodology. It's iterative, and there's a lot of different tools that you can use during all those steps. So choose the one your team will be the more comfortable with. So all these steps are optional. As I said, you can jump, for example, from an Evenstorming and example mapping directly to the code, do some code probe, and go back and forth, collecting some more information. Or, I don't know, if you are a startup and you have only one team, of course, you will not spend time on the organizing phase, obviously. So, this guide, this process ends at designing a social technical architecture, one that cares about technical and team boundaries. That's very important. And the starter modeling process is actually the perfect starting point of your DDD story. You will be having the perfect DDD mindset to get into more advanced DDD, and you will be well prepared to read those famous books that you need to read 5 times, as Thomas said, to understand the intricacies. So yeah, it will really put you in the right mindset to get into more advanced stuff after all. So last but not least, you must collaborate to get the most out of all the workshop you'll be doing during this process. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Maxime.
Thank you.
Thanks.